Hello, my friend. I'm truly glad to be sitting here with you today, sharing a few lessons I've gathered over more than 60 years of living. I know that many of us, especially, once we step into our 40s and 50s, begin to wonder, have I lived fully enough? Is there still something I can change? Something meaningful I can do? And I want to tell you the answer is always yes. I've worked with so many people in the later chapters of their lives. Some carry regret in their hearts. Some still burn brightly with a hunger to learn. And some simply stand quietly at a crossroads, unsure which way to go. Maybe you've felt that too, sitting in a familiar room looking into the mirror and suddenly asking yourself, is this really the person I want to be? Through this long journey, I've realized there is a set of skills, a collection of life attitudes that help us stand firm in the storms, keep clarity in weary days, and even rediscover joy when life seems to have lost its surprises. I call them the principles of living wisely, not just for women, not just for men, but for anyone who wants to live deeply, fully, and with impact. And I want to share these with you, not as a dry curriculum, but as if we were sitting together in a quiet little cafe on a calm afternoon. I'll speak with honesty from what I've seen and lived. And I hope that as you listen, you'll find pieces of yourself in this story. Do you remember the last time you faced a great challenge? Maybe it was a marriage that ended a job that no longer fit, or a morning when you woke up and realized your body didn't feel as strong as it once did. Those moments often make us want to give up. But you know what? It's in those seemingly darkest moments that resilience begins to speak. I remember a friend of mine, she was 58 at the time, who told me, I feel like I've lost everything. My work, my relationship, even my health. But then she began to rise little by little, walking just 10 minutes each day, keeping a journal of her emotions, patiently rebuilding her relationship with herself. After a year, she looked back and said, I never knew I could be this strong. Does that sound familiar to you? Sometimes we don't realize how resilient we are until we have no choice but to get up again. And once you do rise, you begin to see something else. Living with purpose is what keeps us on the right path. I'm not talking about grand goals like changing the world. Sometimes, living with purpose is simply knowing why you get out of bed each morning. It could be caring for your grandchild, finally writing that book you've carried in your heart for years, or simply making the effort to call an old friend. I often encourage my students write down 3 things you want to leave behind when you depart this world. Don't be afraid, this isn't a gloomy exercise. It's more like setting a compass for your life. Because when you know what you want to leave behind, whether it's love, kindness, or meaningful work, you begin to live differently, speak differently, and choose differently. But in order to live with purpose, you must first know who you are. And this is where self-awareness becomes so important. I've met many people who spent their whole lives trying to please others. They wore a mask for so long, they forgot what their true face looked like. But true wisdom begins when you dare to look in the mirror and accept, this is me. I have strengths and I have weaknesses. I will no longer run from myself. When you know yourself, you are less likely to be manipulated, less likely to be swept up in power games or empty promises. And you begin to live honestly with yourself. Another truth I often emphasize with people my age is this: never underestimate the power of critical thinking and creativity. The modern world changes so quickly, and if you only react, you'll always be dragged along. Wise people don't just wait to see what happens, they ask questions, they think differently. They dare to create new solutions. Do you remember the last time you solved a problem in a completely new way? Maybe at home, you tried a different style of conversation instead of arguing. Or at work, you discovered an approach nobody else had noticed. Those moments of creativity remind us that we're still alive, still capable of renewing ourselves no matter our age. And with creativity, you also need another skill: strategic communication. I often say, you don't always have to speak, and not everything needs to be said. Wise people know how to choose their timing. They know that sometimes silence carries more weight than words. One woman I coached told me that in a meeting, instead of interrupting to disagree, she just listened, took notes, and waited until the end. Then she said one single sentence, I think we're missing an opportunity here. And you know what happened? The whole room went silent. Everyone turned to pay attention. That is the power of restraint and selectivity in communication. Of course, to preserve your energy for what matters, you need boundaries. I know this isn't easy, especially for our generation where many of us were taught to sacrifice to endure. But trust me, saying no is an act of self-love and also of love for others. Because when you're burned out, you have nothing left to give. I've seen so many people live their whole lives in quiet resentment, simply because they didn't know how to say no. Have you ever felt that? How many times have you agreed to help someone when deep down you didn't want to, only to later feel angry with yourself? That's the signal that it's time to start practicing saying no. And believe me, once you do, you'll feel a deep relief. By now you might be wondering, so where do all these principles lead me? The answer is, they lead you to a life that is meaningful, powerful, and impactful. And that's what we all want, especially in the second half of our lives. In the following parts, I'll share with you these 13 principles of wisdom one by one through real stories, experiences I've lived, and simple yet powerful lessons from science. I don't want you to just listen and nod. I want you to try them out tomorrow this week, because I believe no matter your age, you can still change. You can still live a life worth being proud of. So let's walk this journey together. Let's treat it like a heartfelt conversation between you and me. No lectures, no pressure. Just honest words from someone who has walked ahead, hoping to leave with you a few small seeds of change. My dear friend, now, I want us to slow down a little so we can walk through each principle I promised. I won't read you a checklist because life is not a list to be ticked off, is it? I want you to imagine this as a long walk along the coastline. At each stretch of the road, we pause, observe, breathe, and then continue. 1. Resilience. I want you to remember the last time you went through a storm. Maybe it was losing a job or the passing of someone you loved. When those storms hit, we often think we'll collapse. Yet strangely, we rise again. One of my students, Robert 62, lost his job after more than 30 years. He felt as if life had ended. But he rebuilt, he learned new skills, opened a small shop, and most importantly, allowed himself to fail without shame. 3 years later, he told me, if I hadn't lost my job, I would never have known I could be this happy. Have you ever gone through something painful only to look back later and feel grateful for it? That's resilience. It doesn't mean no pain, it means pain cannot defeat you. 2. Living with purpose. Many people reach 50 and suddenly feel empty. Children are grown. Work is steady, yet inside there's a whisper. What am I living for now? Try this small exercise. Imagine writing a letter to future generations, your children's students, or simply those who come after you. In that letter you write, the most important thing I learned in life is... What would you say? When you find that answer, you'll realize purpose doesn't have to be grand. It might simply be passing down a value, a belief, or an attitude toward life. And when you wake up each morning, knowing you live for that life becomes lighter, yet full of meaning. 3. Emotional intelligence. You know, one of the most precious lessons I've learned is this: being smart is not enough. You need to manage your heart. I once coached a highly accomplished woman. She had degrees, a prestigious job, but she was exhausted because she couldn't handle her emotions. A single careless comment from a colleague could keep her awake all night. Together, we worked on observing emotions instead of letting them control her. She began journaling. Today I feel angry. But why? Slowly, she realized emotions are signals, not sentences. Ask yourself the next time you feel angry, anxious, or sad. Can you pause and ask, what is this emotion trying to tell me? 4. Self-awareness. The wisest person is not the one who knows the most, but the one who knows themselves. I've met people who were incredibly successful, yet deeply unhappy because they lived by others' expectations. One day, a peer of mine sighed, I've spent my whole life being the man my parents wanted, but I never asked what I wanted. His words stayed with me for a long time. Self-awareness is daring to look in the mirror and accept both the light and the shadows within you. It takes courage. But when you do it, you live more authentically and more freely. 5. Strategic communication. Have you noticed that sometimes when you speak matters more than what you say? A friend of mine, once a senior manager, told me that her greatest secret wasn't having all the answers, but knowing when to remain silent. There are moments when a simple nod carries more weight than a long speech, she said. Strategic communication means being selective, saying less but making every word count. Above all, it means truly listening, not just waiting for your turn to talk. 6. Critical and creative thinking. When young, we tend to accept everything as it is. But as we mature, wisdom begins with asking, why does it have to be this way? Is there another way? A scholar once said, creativity is intelligence having fun. I love that definition, because creativity isn't just for artists or scientists. It could be finding a new way to connect with family or inventing a recipe that surprises your friends. Every time you think differently, you're keeping your brain young. Science shows the brain can form new connections even at 60 or 70 if you dare to try to learn and to fail. 7. Setting boundaries. I believe one of the bravest acts in life is learning to say no. A woman I know spent her youth serving family, friends, colleagues. By 55, she was drained. She finally began saying no to unnecessary demands. At first, she felt guilty, but eventually, she realized by doing so, she gained time for her health, her books, and truly enjoying life. When you set boundaries, you not only protect yourself, you teach others to respect you. 8. Curiosity and lifelong learning. Have you ever heard the saying, "The day we stop learning, we start growing old"? I believe it's true. I've met 70-year-olds eager to master new technologies, and 40-year-olds already closed off to change. Age is not measured in years, but in openness. One of the best ways to keep your mind young is to nurture curiosity. Ask questions. Read, talk with people from other generations. You'll see the world is far wider than your familiar corner. 9. Building strategic relationships. Someone once said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I agree. Through the years, I've seen this clearly. Those who surround themselves with positive, wise people thrive. Those who stay close only to complainers and pessimists slowly wither. Building strategic relationships isn't about using others. It's about choosing a healthy environment for yourself. Because energy is contagious. 10. Positive influence. Truly wise people don't just think for themselves. They know the most meaningful life is one that leaves a gentle mark on others. A student once told me, I don't want to be famous. I just want that when I'm gone, someone can say, because of her, my life was a little better. Positive influence doesn't always mean grand charity. It could be a kind word, a small act that plants a seed. Sometimes that seed grows into a forest you'll never know about. 11. Slowing down and embracing the present. We often think wisdom means running faster, doing more. But at some point you realize true intelligence is pausing, savoring your morning coffee, or enjoying an afternoon of birdsong. Slowing down doesn't mean stopping. It means being present, not letting today slip by in rush and regret. 12. Letting go. Have you ever clung to something knowing it no longer fits? A relationship long drained, a job without passion. Wise people let go, not because they're weak, but because they understand some doors only open when you close the old ones. I once saw a friend after years of holding on to a broken marriage finally let go. She cried endlessly, but later she said, I've never felt this free. Letting go is sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself. 13. Nurturing gratitude. If you ask me, what makes a person radiant in their later years, I would say gratitude. Each morning, I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. They're often small, a sunny day, a good cup of coffee, a heartfelt conversation. Yet these are what fill our souls instead of leaving them hollow. Grateful people don't see more because they have more. They have more because they see more. And that is the kind of light that no age can dim. You see, these 13 principles are not magic formulas, but seeds. If you plant them daily and nurture them with patience, they will slowly grow into a garden of wisdom in your life. My dear friend, we have walked a long journey together. I know the 13 principles I shared are not something unfamiliar. Perhaps you have read them in books, heard them in seminars, or even learned them through your own life experiences. But what makes them different is the way you choose to make them your own. Because knowledge is everywhere. But wisdom only appears when you live it, when you embody it. The beauty of adulthood. Have you ever thought about this? When we were young, we dreamed big. We thought we would change the world, that everything had to be grand, dazzling, and extraordinary. But as we reach our 40s, 50s, or 60s, we realize what truly matters is not the mountains we conquer, but how we walk the small paths of daily life. A quiet afternoon with loved ones. An honest conversation with an old friend. A hug, a smile. A moment of peace. Do you see it? Sometimes it is these small things that are the highest peaks of wisdom in life. I remember an old friend once said to me, "When I was young, I chased success. Now I just want to live deeply." That sentence stayed with me for many years, because it reminded me that wisdom is not in the money you earn, but in the way you savor each moment. From theory to practice. Perhaps you're thinking, this all sounds nice, but how can I practice these things in the middle of a life full of responsibilities and worries? I understand. I've been there too. I once spent my days chasing work, only to end them feeling empty. But do you know what I learned? You don't have to change everything in one day. You only need to begin with one small step. For example, tomorrow you might write down 3 things you are grateful for. Or in a conversation, instead of rushing to reply, pause for 2 seconds and listen more deeply. Or the next time someone asks you for something, dare to say, "No, I'm sorry, I can't." Small changes, when repeated, create great transformation. Just like drops of water filling a jar. A message for those asking, is it too late? I have worked with hundreds of people over 50, and I know one of the questions they carry is, am I too late to change? From my heart, I want to tell you this. It is never too late. Truly, never. I once met a woman who started learning piano at 68. Now at 75, she can play pieces she once only dreamed of. I once knew an old man who decided to learn how to swim at 72 after a lifetime of fearing water. Today he swims 20 laps every morning and says, "I feel like I've been given a new life." You see, change does not care about age. It only cares about determination. And you can begin today. The power of presence. Do you know what people remember us for the most? Not titles, not wealth, but presence. When you are truly present with someone, looking into their eyes, without judgment, listening with a patient heart, you are giving them a gift more valuable than anything money can buy. Think about it. Who has ever truly listened to you, made you feel important, understood? You still remember them, don't you? And you too can be that person for others. That is the deepest kind of positive influence. Questions to carry with you. Before we close, I want to leave you with a few questions, not for you to answer right now, but to carry with you and reflect on. When was the last time you truly felt free? Who in your life makes you a better person, and have you spent enough time with them? Is there something you need to let go of so you can move forward more lightly? How would you like to be remembered? These questions are like mirrors. When you take the time to look into them, you'll find a clearer path for the rest of your journey. The journey is not over. I am 60 years old. I have many experiences, many stories to share. But do you know what I have never felt? Like I am done. I am still learning, still exploring, still trying new things. And I hope you are too. Life is not a race to the finish line. It is a journey, and every day can be a new page. Whether you are 40, 50, or 70, you can still write the next chapter the way you want it to be. If you take only one thing from today's sharing, let it be this: you don't need to be a perfect version of yourself. You only need to be the truest, most resilient version of yourself. Remember, intelligence is not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. Confidence is not about never feeling fear. It's about taking action even while afraid. And resilience is not about never falling. It's about rising every time you do. You can start today. Don't wait until you're ready, because the truth is, we will never feel fully ready. What matters is daring to take a step, even a small one. Thank you for sitting with me, for listening to this story. I hope that when you turn off this video, you will look at your life with a little more light, a little more courage, and a renewed belief that you can and you deserve to live a life that is full, wise, confident, and resilient. And you know what? I would love to hear from you. Leave me a comment. What is the one thing you want to start changing today? I believe that when you write it down, it becomes your first step from thought to action. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, live deeply, live wisely, and live resiliently in your own way.